Welcome back to another Rich Martin podcast. It's so good that you're with us. And today I get to speak with Daniel Grothe. And you might not have come across Daniel. I have come across him through the work that I'm involved with and struck it off really in a great way when chatting with him, because he just carries this amazing tone of building local church and helping people. He's going to unpack his story a whole lot more. You're going to love it. We cover all things from about building local church, his story of what that looks like, but essentially what's it like to commit and say, we're just going to stick to a place and build in one place, build in one situation and one people group. And he's got some amazing take-homes on it. This isn't a kind of advertisement for his book. This was a genuine, I wanted to chat to him all about this book that he's written after I'd stumbled across it. And so we're going to jump straight in there. In the middle of this, we also have the opportunity to be able to listen to Compassion and their amazing work. They are hugely helping many people across the world. And so we're going to jump straight into Daniel Grothe. In the middle of this, we're going to hear all about Compassion. So let's go to the call. Okay, it's great. I am here with a new friend, Daniel Grothe, who is doing some incredible things and has just written an amazing book. But I stumbled across Daniel and his work because we're both involved in a brand new startup app called Glorify. Daniel's involved in helping making sure that the content that goes on this devotional app is theologically sound. and I'm involved in trying to get people to know about the app as well. So it's great to have you here with us, Daniel.
It's good to be here, Rich.
And it is 8 a.m. where you are, which is amazing that you got up so early for us.
It looks like it's 8 a.m. where I'm at.
No, you do look good. And so we're really grateful you're here. And I'd love to talk a little bit more into your book, but find out more. I'm aware, from the little I know, I've stalked you. We've had a few WhatsApps back and forth, but I'm aware you've got 3 kids unless I've counted wrong, I'm really sorry. But there's three beautiful kids, a wife called Lisa. You live in Colorado in America, and you've recently taken on a farm with some friends and built this amazing black barn where you host people in it. And so I'd love to hear more about your life. Before we took into this book, which is amazing, The Power of Place, just give us a little overview of who is Daniel Grothe.
Yeah, I'm 39 years old, born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, here in the States. Pastor's kid. My parents have been pastors for 44 years. And spent 22 years in Tulsa, right in the Word of Faith, charismatic Pentecostal hub of the universe. We call it Tulsa-Jerusalem. And
that's good.
So loved it. Went to Oral Roberts University, played basketball, played music, toured with a band called Gunger for over 10 years. So recording, touring, writing songs. So music, sports really shaped me. Came to Colorado Springs 17 years ago to New Life Church. And when I came, we were riding high. I mean, like kicking butt, taking names. Our pastor was the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, 30 million member group here in the States. So when Congress or Senate were debating laws, they would call us, what do Christians think? Mel Gibson flew in on a private jet to release The Passion of the Christ at our church. President George W. Bush at the time Skyped into our pastors' conference. So we were kind of a hub, and we were riding high until we weren't. When the bottom fell out, our senior pastor was caught in a salacious scandal. He was fired overnight. This is right around 2007 when the global economy's tanking. We discovered we were $26.5 million in debt. We had to fire 44 people overnight, lose our senior pastor, global crash, 44 people fired. And then we get a new senior pastor 10 months later. And on his 100th day in the office, we had just finished Sunday morning services. Children are running through the hallways. You know the drill. Everyone's hungry. We're going to go home. And at that point, we heard the very worst sound you could ever imagine hearing on our campus. A guy ran on our campus with an assault rifle and 1,000 rounds of ammunition and was spraying bullets everywhere. Killed 2 teenage girls and ran in our hallway. Security guard stopped him, shot him in the leg, and he fell down and took his life in our children's hallway. So we've got a double murder suicide on our new pastor's 100th day, a year after losing our senior pastor and firing 44 people. So our church went from the highest heights crashing down into the depths of the valley of the shadow of death that you could never imagine existed. And so I'm a young 24, 25-year-old, just building a family, just getting my feet wet in pastoral ministry. And now we're going, okay, here's what life is like. This is what the Psalms are written for. So pastor's kid came to Colorado Springs and was initiated into the life of the pastor in a very unique way.
Wow.
And in the last 15 years since that happened, God has been so gracious to restore us, to renew us, to reinvigorate us, to help us learn humility, to serve the poor in our city. We were serving Washington, D.C. 17 years ago, and now we're serving Colorado Springs, single parents, widows, orphans.
And what you mean, just to pause you there, what you mean is your church was based how far from Washington?
4-hour flight. I mean, a couple thousand miles. So we were flying out there to do press conferences and press releases and rub elbows with the big dogs. And in that time where we were humiliated by the Spirit of the Lord, and appropriately so, we learned to fall back in love with the place that we lived. We learned to listen to the cries of the poor. I'm not sure that our city would have known if we had gone away as a church overnight. I'm not sure they would have known, but if we went away tonight, our city would feel the loss. And so it's been a beautiful ride, heartbreaking at times, and exultant and glorious. So that's just a little bit about me. 39 years old, married to Lisa with 3 kids, trying to serve the local church.
And so just before we move into some of the stuff there, you've then spent, since 205 to now pastoring in this local church. At what point did you start to delve deep into theology? Because I'm aware you're studying for a doctorate at the moment.
Yeah.
You're about to come over to the UK. We chatted earlier about that off air. What point did all that side of you kick in?
Well, when we bottomed out in our crisis, you really start asking questions. You start going, let's pay attention to the model. Is this model built to do this? The charismatic figurehead approach, one mighty iconic leader. Are we doing this to ourselves? Is this a self-inflicted wound? So I go into a secondhand bookstore on a Monday morning. It's my Sabbath, and I see this book on the shelf, The Contemplative Pastor. And I pull it down, and it says Eugene H. Peterson. And I thought to myself, didn't he translate the Message Bible? So I grabbed it. It was 99 cents. I took it home that day. This is after the shooting and the crisis. And I read it all in one day, 171 pages. It was like an out-of-body experience.
Right.
And I thought, why has no one ever said this? I watched my parents live this, but why have I never seen this in writing? And why do I not hear this at pastors' conferences? So I write Eugene a letter, and I don't know who he is. I don't know where he lives, how old he is, but I know that I just crossed a line of demarcation that I'll never recover from by reading this book. So, dear Mr. Peterson, here's who I am. Here's what's just happened at my church in the last 2 years. Thank you for your book. It's a fault line that shifted underneath me. Can we talk? I sent it to his publisher, and I said, please, could you get this to Mr. Peterson? And I was sure they wouldn't. 2 weeks later, I go to the mailbox, and there's a letter. And I'm looking at it now. It's up here on my shelf. Dear Daniel, yes, I would be willing to spend a day with you here in Montana, period, but not so fast, period. I want you to write a 3-page paper on what is church, and I want you to write a 3-page paper on what is pastor to see if we even have enough common ground to begin a conversation. And then he says, you are a practicing part of the Americanization of the church that is degrading, if not outright destroying, the life of the pastor. Do you think we even have enough common ground to begin a conversation? If you do, I will be happy to talk. The peace of our Lord, Eugene. And that began a 10-year back and forth with Eugene. I made 10 trips with him, stayed at his house. He and Jan shaped me. In that time, that first year of writing letters with him, I read 30 books that I would not have read. Eugene introduced me to conversation partners that I would have never known. He gave us paradigms and frameworks to think through. He chastened us and challenged us and really became the chief rabbi around New Life in those rebuilding years. And he has entered his rest. A few years ago, he passed. I went to his funeral, but he's still provoking us today. And so you ask, what happened on the backside of that pain? Well, we all woke up. We all started pressing in. We started asking bigger questions. And we were humble enough, because we had been broken, we were humble enough to put all the pieces on the table and say, how do we reassemble and what needs to go away? So
how do you think, if Eugene was to walk into your church today, this Sunday, like I just looked back at your Sunday service, it's quite modern, it's contemporary. You've got all the elements that many, kind of Pentecostal evangelical churches would have. What do you think how do you think he'd handle it?
I talked about it with him on my last trip right before he passed. And I said, Eugene, let me tell you the church we were 15 years ago when we found you. We were one church, 14,000 people, one figurehead preacher. And I said, let me tell you about the church we are today. We are 8 locations gathered around our city, all live preaching. We're not piping in a sermon. Smaller micro congregations, local and pastoral and contextual, where people can walk in and actually be known. The service you watched on Sunday, that would have been our largest congregation. Even so, we've broken it down and made it smaller, where people can be known. We're having meals after services with each section. So we started asking ourselves, okay, we're a large church. We can't apologize for that. Somehow people just keep coming. We don't spend any money on marketing. Somehow, I don't know, but to say that the Lord has willed us to continue to be a church, because we have tried to kill it in as many ways as we can.
Right.
He somehow wants us here, but it doesn't mean we work with the old model. So the old model was broken, and we took it out back and gave it a decent funeral. But we have rebuilt in a way that is micro congregations. You walk into my congregation on a Friday night, you're going to be known, you're going to be seen, you're going to be valued. And that is because Eugene said to us, the means are as important as the message.
Wow.
The Jesus Way is a book he wrote, John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And his contention is that many Westerners, many evangelicals, many first world Americans want to tell the Jesus truth in the devil's way.
Wow.
And he says, you cannot tell the good news about the Jesus truth in the devil's way. If you're going to tell the Jesus truth, you have to do it in the Jesus way. And so we have really interrogated our own approach, our own model. And we have built these 8 congregations all around our city in a purposeful way. And Eugene, when I told him that at the end of his life, he just looked at Jan. He had tears running down his face. And he said, could you have imagined that could happen 15 years ago? So I just wanted him to know that he really helped us rethink our approach. And we're constantly having to tweak, and we have to interrogate our models.
Wow. What special stories. I mean, he's just one of the most amazing men of what he's written. And there's that YouTube clip, isn't there? It's like a 20-minute video that some guy in Ireland put out and made of him and went to his house. And I've watched that so many times.
Greg Fromholtz. Thank you, Greg Fromholtz, for doing that work.
Yes, thank you. Because that has been such a refreshment to watch, which is, do you know what I mean? He just captured something that you must have had on all these visits that you did. So look, moving through me, there's all sorts here, but what about this new book that you've written, Power of Place? Talk to us. Now we've got this great oh, look at that. If you're watching on video, Daniel just pushed up. For all 8 YouTube watchers, Daniel, they've just seen
Hi,
it.
Mom.
So the Power of Place. Talk us through, where this is, we now know the context of what you're writing of, which I think is so crucial, but talk us to why you think this is the timing, or why you've been led to pen these words.
Yeah. So what I did not know until a decade ago, I'll tell you what I did know a decade ago. I knew that saints of old took vows. And of course, they would take vows of obedience to scripture. The Bible is our book. I've hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against me. How can a young person keep their way pure? Get the law in front of you. Sure, the Bible matters. I knew that saints of old would take vows of charity with their money, that we are not an island unto ourselves. Live with open hearts and open hands and open doors and open your pocketbooks. Live the vow of charity with and for one another. I knew a decade ago that the saints of old would take vows of chastity with their sexuality, that you are not your own, you're bought with a price, therefore honor God with your body. Stop sleeping around. You can't do that. Live clean, be pure, right? I knew those things. What I did not know was that starting in the year 500, ancient Saint Benedict rose up in Italy and he said, yeah, but we've forgotten, like, take the vow of stability in place. Put down your roots where you are, find your people, find your place, and try to die there. Quit bouncing around. He was reacting to a group called the gyrovagues. Gyro, around. They kept moving around. Vagus, vagabonds, they're on the move. These are spiritual couch surfers. They're looking for the next ecstatic hit of where's the revival breaking out? Oh, we got to go to Toronto. Oh, we got to go to Brownsville. No, we got to go over here. Let's go to Carthage. And he said, quit that. Stay faithful where you are and live out a vow of stability in your local place. And if you'll do that for decades, stacking on decades, you will have an accruing, compounding interest of fruitfulness. And if you look at church history, the saints are always from somewhere.
Yeah, right.
You've got Hildegard of Bingen, you've got Augustine of Hippo, you've got Saint Teresa of Calcutta, like Jesus of Nazareth.
Right.
The way salvation comes into the world is through the particularity of place. People being committed to their local communities and their families and their synagogues. And we live in an age, here's why I wrote the book. We live in an age of wanderlust. We live in an age that says you have to escape the confines of your local place. You have to transcend. You have to rise above. A prophet's not honored in their own hometown. Nobody knows how great I am. So I'm just going to keep moving and find my truth. And what you look up after 10 years, you look up after living that way, and you have nothing to show for your last decade. You paid your bills, maybe. You made some friends along the way, but you don't have any rootage in place, which is the way that the saints have lived. So it's a book trying to rebuke this moment of wanderlust and trying to reclaim for us the ancient vow of stability.
And I mean, it's a great read. I said earlier, I'm not through the whole thing, but I've already started recommending it.
Oh man, thank you.
Which is it's just such a special book. I think, being brutally honest, there's a lot of books that are written from just preachers. People do great preachers. Someone ghostwrites it, and you're churning through kind of like 10, 15 chapters of a similar thing. What's refreshing about what you're doing is it's packed with stories, packed with great examples. And could I just ask around this then? So we're in this age of wanderlust. People are traveling all around everywhere. How much of this idea of sticking around is a discipline? How much of it is, your family, your kids, your 3 kids, they're going to grow up and at one point they might say, I want to go to university. Is there a certain point in life that you're saying, hold it, you just need to dig your heels in? And you just need to say, this is it.
Sure. So let me just name up front, this book does not romanticize place. And this book is not to suggest that we will never move. Our faith journey begins in Genesis 12. Abram and Sarai, pack your bags, let's go. Go to a land that I will show you. We've got the people of God who are wandering through the wilderness. They've been exiled in Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia. Like, life is dynamic. So I'm not here saying where you're born is where you will die. I lived 22 years in Tulsa. I've been here 17 now. And if the Lord demands a move for me in the future, I will make it. But what I'm saying is that most people live with the assumption that place doesn't matter. And as long as I can pay my bills, I'm fine. And that is a new experiment in human history. And social psychologists are again, interrogating this way of being. And they're saying, okay, great. So we in the first world can do whatever we want and move wherever we want, whenever we want. Fine. How's that working out for us?
Mm.
Our anxiety is historically off the charts. Our substance abuse is spiking in incredible ways. We're lonely. We're lonely. How in the world, in an age where we can be in touch all the time, how can we be lonely? And they're saying, well, I think we've lost the gift of being rooted in place.
Mm.
We no longer have intergenerational relationships with
Right.
grandparents who are getting to see their grandchildren
Yeah.
raised, and grandchildren running over to their house and checking on them. And but the global south to this day is still having to live like that. They're having to take care of each other. They've got 3 and 4 generations living in one house at a time, and they may be living on $1 or less a day. But you go to these places, and Rich, I know you've seen the world. I go to sub-Saharan Africa. I go to Asia. I go all over the globe, South America, and I see a joy and a simplicity and a communal affection that we had lost in the first world west. And so you may be called to go to college. You may have a move because of work that shifts and economies change. I get it. But if all remains equal, if you can stay where you are, if the Lord is not demanding a move from you, put down your roots, serve those people there, lay your life down for community, practice the practices of stability, which are family and friends and church and community. If you'll do those things and commit to it over the long haul and fight through the boredom and fight through the difficult relationships, I think you'll look up 30, 40 years from now and find that you're rich in all the right ways.
Amazing. Hey, how good's this with Daniel? And I just wanted to take a minute out of the conversation to thank our partner, Compassion. Compassion are the most incredible charity that I've had the privilege of being able to work with and also go out and see their projects firsthand. And Compassion go into some of the most difficult circumstances in the world and help support children and communities by partnering them with people like you and me. And the partnership's really simple. It's a monthly amount that we commit to giving to a child. My wife Jules and I have committed to give to 2 children, and we give a monthly amount, and for that the child receives medical care. It receives a church community that they can be a part of if they choose to. They receive education, and they're essentially just well looked after and thought about and cared for. And it's a brilliant system of us being able to help and care outside of the place where God has put us. And you know, the fact that our children, we've got 3 children, are able to sit and see letters that come through the door pretty much every month, and then we're able to write back to these children and tell them about our journey, what God's doing with us, and to say that we're praying for them and we're thinking about them is so good. And Compassion are the world's best at that. They're the best because 1, the money that you give has a huge impact on a child's life, and 2, they're the best because how they communicate with you is absolutely incredible. That is all driven in the UK on an app, and so it's very simple. You go on the Compassion app and you're able to see progress and be able to write to them through the app, or you can still do it through the old-fashioned way of pen and paper. The reason I'm telling you this is because I'd love you to consider thinking about, is this something that you could bring into your family home, of how you could show your children that you live in this amazing place, but there are some people who don't have this privilege. Well, I want to just highly recommend Compassion to you and the work that they've done. The team are outstanding, and the way that they deliver their projects is genuinely really special. So go check them out. You can go to compassionuk.org and all the information's there. And I know if you wanted to chat to any of their team, they would love to be able to chat to you. Well, look, let's jump straight back in to hear more from Daniel. What Daniel of 10 years ago wasn't particularly thinking deeply like this, I'm guessing, because books come over time. What are you currently now doing differently then? What are you doing differently on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis that just looks different because you've taken these principles and practices and said, you know what, I'm going to embed them in? What's different?
Well, we did move out to this land with my sister and brother-in-law and their kids and another family. That is something that we chose to do based on reading people like Wendell Berry and watching Eugene Peterson's legacy and different ones who've lived vows of stability, the ancient saints of old. They would gather together and group together. And we think we're rich if we have financial capital. But human beings for thousands of years have understood themselves to be rich when they have social capital.
Come on.
So on this ranch, I've got auntie and uncle living right next door for my kids. And Uncle David is a farmer and he's raising, we're raising cattle, we're raising pigs, we've got 6 horses, we've got goats, there's dogs that are breeding and our kids are helping deliver 15 piglets at a time. And my daughter was late to dinner recently because she wasn't done castrating the piglets. And I thought, when did I think my teenage daughter would tell me she was going to be late because she wasn't done castrating the piglets? So Uncle David can do things that I can't, and he can help raise my children in a way that I can't. And then his kids run over here and we feed them dinner and we help them and we encourage them. And sometimes we correct them just like they're correcting our kids. And the Gallers are next door. And our kids, they understand themselves to be surrounded by a community of saints who have their best interest in mind. So we're living this way out on the land because we think place matters, and we want our kids to put their hands in the soil and fall in love with the place they are. So I'll just say this. With our age of wanderlust, we also live in an age of disincarnation.
Oh, go on.
Think about this. Technology, we can Zoom. Praise God for Zoom, especially during pandemics, right? But we have gotten further and further away from the physicality of the earth that God has given us. And you read in Genesis 1 and 2, God is a materialist. He's like a full-blooded, unapologetic materialist. He's working with his hands. He's in the soil. He's creating trees and herbs and garden. And there's the water and there's the ground. And the further we go with our technological advancement, the further away from incarnation we are drifting. And so our kids are working. They're putting their hands on it. They're helping raise cattle. So that's something that we're doing different. And we tell them our 3 rules are: at the end of every day, you have to earn your dinner, you have to earn your shower, and you have to earn your sleep. And so if you come in hungry, we've done something right. If you come in dirty, we've done something right. If you come in tired and ready for bed, we've done something right. And if one of those 3 doesn't happen on a given day, something was wrong.
Wow.
And so the grit, the dirt under your fingernails, the understanding how God's creation works, we're doing that differently based on this conviction of the power of place. So those are a couple things.
That's incredible. And how have you heard people take what you've taught, or the circles that you've been in researching this, doing this in more of an urban context?
Yeah.
Because between you and
Communal
me,
gardens.
I
Yeah.
don't have chickens, cows, hens, or
No. And that's totally fine. Again, this is not romanticizing.
No, I know.
You get to contextualize it. So how has it been contextualized? Retirees or pensioners who are sitting around 65 years old and they've got a good 20-year run in front of them. I've encouraged a bunch of these men to go down to our local Springs rescue mission and get involved. Like, you have more time than you've ever had. You have more disposable income than you've ever had. You have more experience and wisdom than you've ever had. And you're going to spend the next 20 years just golfing and taking cruises? Really? Like, please golf and please take cruises. But you've got 20 years in front of you, and these guys are going down and they're adopting these guys who 5 years ago were living out on the streets, and 2 years ago they're figuring out how to not be drunks anymore. And they're bringing them to church, and they're having them over for Thanksgiving meal, and they're investing in them, teaching them how to interview for a job, helping them gain life skills, and they're finding their footing. These men who were living out on the streets, they're finding their footing with the apprenticeship of solid men of God who lived a long obedience in the same direction. Yeah. So, like, the power of place. You're living here. Do you know who else is living here and who needs what you've gained? Helping those people match up and it gives strength to the weary, and it also gives purpose to the pensioner. And I just think like there are unique ways that you can do this. Grow some vegetables on your apartment patio.
Right.
Um, get out and use your body, hike, move around,
Yeah.
go up to your local schools and do a workshop and give the skills that you gain to these kids and help them get better. Like, fall back in love with where you are and give
Wow.
the very best of what God has given you to the people around you.
Wow. Wow. How it's so good, Daniel. How do you, as a pastor in a local church, how, and this is obviously, this isn't just a subject, this is your life's work.
Mm.
This is one of the blocks I'm guessing that would be
Yeah,
part of your
yeah,
life's work.
yeah.
How do you embed that into a youth ministry or a young
Hmm.
adults
Hmm.
ministry
Hmm.
where I don't know, it'd normally be like, we're going to be doing like Nerf wars, like
Right,
younger
right,
age
right, right,
groups. And
right,
then
right.
as you're going up, it's like, we're going to be, got big gaming things going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Like, if I got it wrong, if I come to your youth ministry, am I going to be milking a cow is currently what I'm
No,
thinking.
no,
Cause
no, no, no,
that
no,
would be
no.
awesome.
No, I live
But
15 minutes away from church and drive in and live a very normal suburban
right,
existence,
right,
just
right.
like you would know.
Right. So how do you embed like this
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah,
like slower
yeah,
thing into younger people coming through where
yeah,
everything else in the world is telling them to do something different?
yeah. Live a different story and live in such a way that people don't remember a time that you weren't there.
Hmm.
So if you're in a local church, if let's just create a scenario, you're 50 years old, you've got three kids, 20, 18, and 16, and two of your kids are in youth group. Let your home be the place where everyone comes and gets fed. Let
Nice.
your home be a place where teenagers come over and see a decent marriage and see people who know how to forgive each other and apologize and repent and be decent to one another. Live in such a way that you're at your church every week, and those youth kids, they come in after a Saturday night out where they were tempted to live a different story, and they come in and they see you on Sunday morning wholesome and go find them and hug it out and be interested in their lives
Mhm.
and check up on them, and how's high school and how are sports, and it's finals week or midterms or whatever you call it over there, level A or A levels,
Yeah,
or
levels, yeah.
yours, you got your big tests. How are you doing? Do you need anything? Can I feed you?
Amazing.
If you'll just live the simple vow of stability, just be faithful. It's not rocket science,
Mm.
but what happens is those kids, they hit a critical moment in their college years, in their uni years, and they'll come back home for a vacation. And who do they want to have lunch with to talk about the big issues of life? Well, if you've lived right, you're their first call. Or when they come back, you say to them at church when you see them, hey, can we get coffee this week? I'd love to catch up and check in on your life and just tell you how proud of you I am. So fast forward that 30 years later, you're 80 and they're 50. And you're about to enter your rest. Who's going to come and officiate your funeral? Who's going to come and celebrate you? Who's going to come and check up on your widow? Those people are. So it's life cycles of faithfulness within the context of a local community or a church. And when you do it right, the old watch the young grow up, and then the young grow up and bury the old, and everyone has what they need over the cycle of decades.
Wow. Wow. I could listen to this all day. Talk me through what are you thinking, Daniel, about the local church? You're based in the US, but you got a great knowledge of Europe, and you're about to
Mhm.
come over and
Yeah,
do some stuff in Oxford and travel around
yeah,
to do some
yeah,
doctorate stuff. You've got great
mhm,
friends in Pete Gregg and his team at
yeah, yeah,
Emmaus Church, and so
mhm,
Europe as well
yeah,
as
yeah.
many people here. What do
Mhm,
you see for the future of a church? We talked earlier before the
mhm,
podcast about how there has been previously since maybe the 2000s of us looking to America, and we've implemented a lot of American church models. I think
mhm.
many people are coming to the realization of, hold up, I think maybe we've got these signature keys for our land, and getting a bit confident and working out how we're going to
Right,
reach people. What would you want
right.
to speak into it from it as one of our great American brothers?
Well, I would say we're looking at you, and please don't look at us. We're looking at you. You're 20 to 30 years in front of us with this shift toward I don't know, there's a cultural shift afoot that you guys, you're mapping out in front of us, and you're learning things that we are watching.
Mm.
And so your radical hospitality with stuff like Alpha and the prayer course, and bringing people in who have lived outside of the framework of God raised his son Jesus from the dead and has given us his Holy Spirit. They're not living in that framework. And so, but now after 10 or 20 years of not living in that framework, they're starting to see how hollow it is living in these lesser meaning making narratives, and they're starting to wake up. And you all are opening your doors, and you're feeding people, and you're praying for people, and you're listening to people. The gentle, listening, hospitable, warm welcome that you are giving to the world is waking people back up to the life of Jesus Christ. And we are watching you, and we are learning from you, because now that wave is crashing on our shores, the wave of secularism and I'm not interested. And so the Bible Belt, just throw the doors open on Sunday and everyone's going to come. That's not working anymore. So please hear from me. Well done, good and faithful. You all are piloting and pioneering new ways forward that we're learning from. So I would say continue to be generous of spirit, generous of soul, generous of resources. Open your homes, keep feeding people, keep asking really good questions, keep waiting for people to come home. Like, have the fattened calves ready out in the stall, so that when the prodigals come home, you've got something, you got a party you're ready to throw. And don't look now, but the kingdom is coming in little micro movements, in little prodigal packs coming home. And so I want you to know, don't look at us, we're looking at you, and we're inspired by your simple, gentle faithfulness and by your hospitality. So thank you. We bless you. I love where you live, Rich. I love the way that you are bodying forth the kingdom and imaging it forth. And the American church is learning from you.
Come on. Well, I'm greatly encouraged and also convicted as well, because I'm thinking, God, I need to do a bit of what Daniel's been saying here today. One last question, because it's so encouraging to hear that. And you're totally right. One of the signature keys I feel like for Europe is hospitality. I always find it unusual when I go to America that you have to book in to go to someone's house for a cup of tea. It's kind of like a diaried appointment, whereas this still is deep within this culture. You just walk into someone's house, and away you go. But it's part of what we've got. It's how the keys for the lands that we're in. So, but the last question, kind of, how do you now dream for your future? I'm surmising and guessing, but maybe 15 years ago, Daniel Grothe was like, right, I'm going to produce an album. I'm going to write these books. They're going to go worldwide. I'm going to do, have a ministry with a logo and, all the stuff that's easy to dream into. Where do your dreams now go, and where do they land with the context of power of place? What do they look like? You'd have to tell us you're in, the dreams of your heart, but what kind of the tone of them?
I'm happy to tell you the dreams of my heart. I want to be an 85-year-old man, bald as a cue ball, smile on my face, in the same church, if God allows me, if he doesn't demand a move, in the same church. Now I've got, at that point, 63 years stacked up there, praying for people, blessing grandchildren, living in such a way that when people know life hits the fan, they know where to go. When life falls apart, they know that there's going to be an old bald-headed man up at New Life Church, and I'll just go up there and find him, and he'll receive me. I want to create a community of generosity and hospitality where the weary world can come back in. All the people who said, gave the middle finger to the heavenlies, and they live that story for 20 years, and they find themselves deeply lonely and deeply sad, and they go, you know what? Father's house wasn't so bad after all. I think that's the truest story on the planet. Ready to receive those people. I want to live in such a way on this land that pastors and missionaries and people who are doing the hard work of building the kingdom of God, single moms, it doesn't have to be that. They can come out to this place and be refreshed. We named it Quiet Waters Ranch. We want it to be a Psalm 23 verse 2 kind of experience for people. So we want our home place to be a place where people get fed and nurtured back to life. So that's kind of what's in my heart. And really you got to do the slow play. There is nothing quick about this. There is nothing programmatic about this. You can't brand this or there's no logo that can achieve what I just told you I'm dreaming about, but just a rugged determination to, if God will allow me, I'm going to try to die here living with my arms wide open for these people. So grant it, Lord, I pray.
Oh, man. And you know what? When I hear that, you say, it's slow, but you know what? It's achievable for everyone. A lot of the other kind of, write down your 5-year plans, think big, big audacious goals that God can do some stuff with, mark out territories, put pins in maps, stuff that we've all been around growing up through the church. Some of it you think, well, God, I've got to be some sort of superhuman. I've got to become, whereas what you've just described, it's like, I could do that.
Everyone can do this.
Yeah.
Be the Simeon and the Anna.
Oh, come on.
I mean, read Luke chapter 2. Just try to be old Simeon or old woman Anna in the house of God, and welcome people and be gracious and have a worshiping spirit. Their eyes were bright at the end of their days. Man, we can go so hard with our 5-year plans and we show up at the end as a shell of a human being, or we can just live a decent, prayerful, hospitable, faithful flow. And at the end, Lord willing, be looking for the consolation of Israel and worshiping into the grave.
Come on. Oh, Daniel, I could
Rich
speak
Martin,
again.
I love you, brother.
Well,
you've so good.
You've got a whole day ahead. I've got to go do the stuff of picking my kids up from school.
Hey, that's the power of place, bro.
The power of place.
Stability.
Yeah, I mean, they'll scream as I get them home. My wife's on nights tonight, so I've got to try and make them dinner. Oh, I feel like I'm living the power of place. So
you are, bro. Don't look now; it's happening.
I'll go newt some cats or whatever your daughter did earlier. So, but a massive thank you for being with us, Daniel. A huge blessing, and we're so grateful. So, thank you, mate.
Much love.
Well, Daniel Grothe, how good was that? I so loved speaking to him. I hope you enjoyed it. You can get his book from all great bookstores, and I'm sure loads of places have got it, The Power of Place, and you can just hunt that down. It's amazing, or reach out to me. Thank you so much for all your feedback on this. If you're enjoying it, send me a text, send me an email, DM me, send a pigeon, whatever it might be. I love hearing the encouragement. You're a great, great group of people, and I know that you're going to have a brilliant week. So, see you on the next podcast.